Hello, my name is Ryan, and I'm here to talk about anti-gravity today. Anti-gravity in the form of a precessing top. So first we have to derive a gravity equation from the precessing top equation. If you see my cursor right here, I'll be highlighting and circling this equation, which has gravity in it right here. Now if we solve for gravity algebraically, we get omega precession times the moment of inertia times omega over mass times radius equals gravity. Using basic algebra, moment of inertia and omega come up over here, giving you three variables here, and then mass and radius divide, which is what I just said right here in this equation here. Using the moment of inertia, in this case we're going to be using the moment of inertia for a hoop, that being I equals mr squared. Substituting I equals mr squared in for I, you get omega precession times mass times radius squared times omega over mass times radius equals gravity. Now, assuming mass equals 1 kilogram and radius equals 1 meter, we can deduce that these m's will cancel each other out, and this r will cancel out this radius will cancel out one of the radiuses above, leaving us with omega precession times radius times omega equals gravity, or omega precession times omega times radius equals an acceleration. Lastly, this can be true for a charge too, for a charge has mass. And if a charge rotates or precesses, and a charge rotates in a perpendicular plane with a certain radius between them, then there also is an acceleration or gravitational component. This is true of the anti-gravity wheel here from Veritasium. As he rotates in two perpendicular planes, this flywheel. So the flywheel is rotating and he's rotating it in a perpendicular plane. Since the two do not line up, there is an acceleration in the third plane, which is causing it to move directly upwards. Here we'll see it in slow motion. The wheel is spinning counterclockwise and he's rotating the entire apparatus clockwise. These two rotations combined and in perpendicular relations will always yield a third plane manifestation of an acceleration, or what we would call gravity. Now, given that acceleration can be a form of charge too, we know that any rotating charge, omega precession or omega in general, any rotating charge produces a magnetic field. This is what Standeo has unveiled to us.
Did worked. Now, up there at the top left is how he wound one set of washer and rod.
The washer is omega P and the rod is omega. So just like in this rotating mechanism here, the flywheel can be this rod, the rotating charge here going through the coil is the flywheel. The rotating charge going around the toroid would be the rod itself.
And then he put them into this on particle board. 15-degree spacing as we twisted the various layers apart.
And they used pulsed DC around 60 hertz to get this to work. What would happen is the two perpendicular magnetic fields would be closely related to the two perpendicular rotations because the charges were rotating in perpendicular planes. The charges here going through the coils were rotating in perpendicular planes, thus giving rise to a certain type of field that caused an acceleration similar to this anti-gravity wheel. And notice it's very important, this acceleration or gravity will only take place during a change in precession, in rate of precession, or a change in the speed of the spinning top. If there's no acceleration or a change in between them, then it will not work. If one just has a constant velocity with both the precession and the rate of the spinning top or wheel, then there will be no acceleration because it involves a change over time. That's the only way it can happen. In the same manner, one cannot produce a magnetic field unless there's a change in current, and one cannot produce a current, induce a current, unless there's a change in the magnetic field. This is all in relation to one another. So Victor Schoberger produced the original flying saucer, in my opinion, and he had air intakes that would rotate in one perpendicular plane here, and then have a vortex also that would rotate in a perpendicular plane from that original rotation. So there's one rotation, omega precession, and here's another rotation here in this tornado here, giving us a rate of speed in a perpendicular direction. This is technically a tornado, a donut, and a tornado. When a rotating donut and a rotating tornado interact, and you don't let the two line up, as the donut or the rotating donut gets absorbed by the tornado or gets rotated by the tornado, then there's an acceleration or a gravitational field that happens in between them that causes the object to levitate. Now, another way acceleration can be reduced to zero and gravity can be reduced to zero rather than 9.8 meters per second. If one wants gravity to be reduced to zero, then omega p and omega have to go approach zero. So in this case, for acceleration to approach zero, the charge of precession and the rotating charge need to approach zero, or the rotating mechanism precessing and the rotating mechanism itself need to approach a speed of zero. Now, how is this possible? This is possible with complete destructive interference via magnetic and electric activity. Where there is complete electric and magnetic destructive interference, there is still all the energy going on about, but the rotation vector or the rotation is slowed to zero, and this causes no change. This causes a change in gravitational potential.
Inheritance and then blasts away with these two coils at them. Basically, what he establishes is an electromagnetic fighting itself, electromagnetic forces fighting themselves. And gravitational force is made when a gravitational potential is made when electromagnetic forces fight themselves to a draw, when, in other words, the gradients become zero. The gradient vectors or the resultants become zero, but the two forces are still in there slugging it out. All the energy is still going, the work is still going, but it's trapped locally. That's internal energy. That's what gravity is. And the Whittaker paper tells very well how to do that. So when John got things just right, he didn't have control of it, absolute control, but he bored in there with persistence, and when he got things just right to get the forces to fight to a draw, and there was the right nonlinearity in the target, he would have levitation of things even 64 pounds. He would also, another thing you do with such a thing, you cause...
So you would have levitation up to 64 pounds just by canceling out the electromagnetic forces from radio waves. He would get them to line up and to cancel out completely, thus being in phase and opposite of each other, causing a gravitational gradient. And if anyone's seen John Hutchinson's work, you do see cannonballs and stuff levitating, and I believe that is fully real. And this is based off of this equation, this acceleration equation, that when charges stand themselves to a draw, and acceleration goes to zero. The other way to produce anti-gravity is by having a pulsed mechanism that pulses an acceleration in one direction, just like Standeo showed us, and they showed us here in Veritasium. Victor Schoberger's work is another example of this, where he rotated in two perpendicular planes air, and this caused an acceleration. Now we're hearing that gravity is based upon opposing charges, opposing magnetic fields, bringing a gravitational potential out from there. Now this is the last witness to what gravity is or anti-gravity is, and this is assuming that gravity is also magnetic fields colliding with one another and electric fields colliding with one another.
If they can get a gravity wave to cause things to move. Mm-hmm. Well, that isn't what we're talking about at all. Mm-hmm. So I wondered if gravity could be related to its cousin magnetism. Mm-hmm. And so I found that when I take two magnets together, I have some neodymiums around here that I'm actually afraid of.
They're so strong.
They can danger you. But anyhow, you take a magnet, you go to put them together and they go clunk, right? But you take one of them, move it around, and all of a sudden it doesn't want to go together.
They're repulsive.
So I got I ordered one at $5,000 a piece, with a 1/4-inch hole through between both of them, and I put a brass bolt and I tightened them down, forcing them together. And then I put them together in a thing that looks kind of like a rock. Okay, and then I got another one that didn't have magnets in it. And Galileo, in all his endeavors, he went up to the Leaning Tower of Pisa
And drop the...
and he dropped a big rock and a small rock. And his buddy down at the bottom kept telling him that the large rock and small rock rise at the same time.
Well, in my left hand I have a feather. In my right hand a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago, who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather for our falcon. And I'll drop the two of them here, and hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that? That proves that Mr. Galileo was correct in his findings.
Well, I went up to in the Lockheed Building 501 by the side of escalators and elevators.
Oh, wow.
And I got 9 guys that were not educated and didn't have pre opinions on anything. And I dropped my 2 rocks. And I said, what I would like you to do is, I told them what I'd like you to do is I would like you to take whichever one arrives first, get it in your hand, and when I come down the elevator, hand it to me. Now, they looked identical, except for...
And nobody knew what was inside?
No, absolutely not. All the 9 times that I tested it, it's as though the one with the opposing magnet field extending out 3 feet on each side. I actually measured
how big the field is.
How big the field was, and on each side of one rock, I had a total of 6 feet. At any rate, the other rock arrived first.
Which one arrived first?
The one that had no magnetic field in it.
So you were able to cancel out gravity to a certain degree. You were able to cancel,
precisely,
reduce the mass gravity effect.